And good evening, everybody, and welcome to Pint of Science Netherlands, Thuis at home. So this is episode 4, and today my name is Hannah. I am based in Utrecht. I work at the Prinses Maxima Centre. I'm a volunteer for Pint of Science, and on this side we have Margarida.
Hi, Hannah. I'm Margarida. I'm a PhD student at the University of Utrecht, actually at the University Hospital. And I'm here today with Hannah to give you the first talk of Pint of Science at House. So I'm very excited about it.
Me too. I'm very interested in this topic. So today is a little bit different from the kind of talks we usually do. So usually we have a scientist come on and explain their science in a way that people that do not work in the science industry understand it. But today we're talking about something that is a little bit dear to my heart, and it's about sustainability. And not so much sustainability science, but sustainability in science. So as scientists and as the science industry, what we need to do to be sustainable and why that's important. So we have 2 guests tonight. They are eLife ambassadors. So they will join us now. We have Bente and Gazda. Hi. Welcome. So maybe you can just introduce yourselves a little bit. So Bente?
Yeah, so my name is Bente. I'm a PhD student at the Netherlands Cancer Institute in Amsterdam, and I'm actually almost finished. So I will move on to the next step in my career soon. And what I'm studying is specifically DNA replication stress in cells. And there, next to that, I'm also really interested in sustainability in science.
Great. And Gazda?
My name is Gazda. I'm originally from Poland, and this year I just finished my PhD at Sibiu University of Porto, looking at the genetic basis of traits using canary bird as a model, and not mainly looking at the coloration. And then I was supposed to start my postdoc at population genomics of penguins, but with COVID it got a bit complicated. So I had to find another job, and I'm starting my postdoc in August in Paris, working at functional genomics of menstruation.
Ah, brilliant. So those both sound like very interesting topics, and I would love to hear more, but we're here to talk about sustainability tonight, so you'll have to tell me another time. So I guess I got in touch with you both, and I found you as eLife ambassadors. So number one, I would like to ask, what is an eLife ambassador, and kind of what do you do, and what does it have to do with being a sustainable scientist?
So basically, the eLife publishing group organized a call for early career scientists that were enthusiastic to make a positive change within science and with all different topics of science. So Gazda and I both signed up, and we were both interested in sustainability in science. So we joined an initiative called Sustainability in Science to raise more awareness for the environmental issues that we have in science.
I can also add that we were working together with other 250 people from all around the world. So we have people from all continents, and that was like really exciting to put all young people at different career stages together to think like how to make our science better.
Okay, interesting. So it's a worldwide kind of organization to really look at the science industry, because the science industry is very international. It's not so single country based. So it's quite nice that on a worldwide level, they're really looking at how to make the whole industry more sustainable in their practices. Yeah, that's really cool. So I will just say to the audience that if at any point you want to ask any questions, please do just type them and they will pop up and we will get to them as we can. But maybe Bente, you would like to tell us a little bit more about why sustainability in science is even an issue.
Yeah, so I think we all know that about the climate change, about that the estimation that at the end of the century the temperature will rise by 3 to 6 degrees, which will lead to melting of the Arctic poles, rising levels of the sea, but also can lead to social problems. And then I didn't talk about the plastic pollution that we have. So we have plastic pollution in the oceans. That's really famous, but basically it's in every ecosystem. So what people mostly associate with science is the good stuff that we do. So I'm working in a cancer hospital, which is really, really important. And it's also, but at the same time, we produce a huge amount of plastic waste. And also we use an enormous amount of energy. And actually, there are some ways that we can improve. So we can do some good science with a minimal impact, but that's still not the case at this moment. Yeah.
Okay, and so when you say that we're using huge amounts of waste, kind of, what are we talking in either comparison to other industries or us at home? Like, what are we?
Yeah, so what I can say, for example, is that scientists around the world produce 5.5 million tons of plastic waste, and that's approximately 2% of the plastic waste that is generated worldwide.
Wow.
So that's an enormous amount of plastic, but we also use a lot of energy. For example, if you have an ultra low temperature freezer at your lab, then such a freezer is using the same amount of energy as was one average household already.
Wow. Okay.
So that's going pretty fast if you imagine that the basement of the NKI is full of this type of freezers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Gossia, did you have any more points on that? So from your point of view, why is sustainability in science so important?
Well, so I think like if you work in the lab, like every day you produce some waste, but like you don't really think like how much it accumulates. So as eLife Ambassadors program, we organized the Lab Waste Day. So lots of people posted like how much plastic waste they produce during one day of work, and then they calculated it, how much it will be if they do it basically every day, and then you get like kilos of plastic waste. Well, depending how intensive is the lab work, and this is like quite substantial amount. And the great idea would be like if we manage to reduce it as much as possible, that will make our science, I mean, in the way better, because we will not be like producing so much waste and using so much energy.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. I'm actually curious, how do you participate? When does this happen?
So
the lab day.
Sorry?
The lab day, I mean the lab day, when does this happen? How can you participate?
So that's a good question. We're organizing it again this year. It's the second Tuesday of September, and it's basically on social media. So what we ask scientists to do is to collect all their plastic waste of one day and then weight it to see how much you produce. And then you can even calculate to how much plastic waste you would produce in a year, and then maybe make a photo of your waste, of you and your waste, and put it on social media using the hashtag Lab Waste Day.
No, I think that's very important because, as you said before, there's a lot of the things that we do. I also work in a children's cancer institute, and you get very focused on the main goal of what we're doing, and you forget about this whole environmental side. And probably to people that don't work in the industry, just to say, they're maybe thinking, why are you guys using so much waste? But I guess when you work in a lab, you want to be very sterile and you need to work in a very clean way. So a lot of things are disposable because if they're contaminated, you can't use them again. But yeah, and so, I mean, can you just kind of looking at the plastic waste side of it, what kind of things as eLife ambassadors do you suggest in terms of tips and things like that for people reducing that kind of plastic waste?
So there are different things that you could do. For one thing, for example, is to switch from plastic disposables to glassware. So the advantage of glassware is that you can use it multiple times. It's a little bit higher in initial purchase costs, but if you use it like for more than 10 times, you already get back the money. A drawback of glassware is, of course, that you need to clean it to get it proper sterile. But also, if you clean it, if you wash it and autoclave it, which basically is sterilizing, then this still consumes less energy. So the production of glassware, together with the cleaning of glassware, produces less energy compared to a single single-use plastic disposable.
Yeah. Okay. That's those
So,
kind of things to know.
yeah, and there are definitely options there. What you can also do to minimize your plastic is, for example, there are companies that can take back gloves. So if you recycle gloves, or if your gloves aren't contaminated, you could recycle them. Only these programs are not incorporated in the Netherlands yet. They're mainly in the UK and California, USA. What you could also think of is using thinner gloves, so they have less plastic. So you don't really need the thick ones in most cases. If you don't really know where to start reducing plastic, we with the eLife ambassadors also made basically a card game that you can play with your colleagues. And then every time you reduce or you don't use a plastic item that you would have used, you get points. And then if you play it together with your colleagues, so at the end of the week or at the end of the month, you can calculate who's the winner. It's basically to raise awareness.
Yeah, my team like prizes, so I think that would go down well.
Yeah,
and we have just had one question regarding where do you share all of these things? Where do you share the knowledge? Is it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, so as that's also a good question. So with the eLife ambassadors, we are in the progress of making a website. We will share the link at the end. And there are a lot of resources what you can find, blog posts, but also the card game, for example. And we're also setting up a Slack channel to keep in contact with each other. And so also other people that are want to join us or that have good ideas on being sustainable in science. Yeah, it would be really nice if you could join as well.
Well, I guess the ideal would be that the whole science industry is part of the eLife ambassador community.
Yeah.
Everyone's an eLife ambassador. And so just talking of the plastic waste, I mean, one of the reasons why I find this topic so interesting, and as I say, it's dear to my heart, within my lab, we're also looking at doing something also in terms of reducing plastic. So we have a couple of PhD students who are bioprinter specialized, and they are completely obsessed and in love with their 3D printers. So we have a couple of 3D printers in the lab, and one thing that's quite cool about those is that we're able to print customized labware. And so now we're looking at starting up a project where we can actually recycle non-contaminated plastics that are used within our lab. And then hopefully, once we get the pilot experiments going, we can take it to the whole institute. But then recycling those plastics, using a machine to shred them down and turn them into the filament, which is on a coil that feeds into these 3D printers. So then we can eventually print new lab equipment with old lab waste and old lab equipment that would usually just be disposed of and thrown away and burnt or chopped up and put somewhere. So this is another project that we're looking at doing within my lab at the Princess Maxima. And I think it's also quite another cool way, because it really takes the whole, what you're using in the lab and not only customizing equipment, and not having to buy plastic to do that, but really using, those 20 tip boxes that you used for that experiment where you had to pipette a million things to make a new pipette or to make a new piece of equipment, something to hold your tubes in. So I think getting initiatives like that is actually quite important.
And it's also nice because normally recycling, the plastic is used for all different type of things. So if you recycle gloves, for example, they make garden furniture out of the recycled gloves. But what you are doing at the Princess Maxima is even better, because you are really reusing the same plastic again.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So that's the point. Oh, sorry.
No, you can finish. I was just curious, how is it going so far? But you can finish.
Oh, yeah. What I wanted to say is that recycling is good, of course, and especially if you do it in the way that Hannah was talking about. So you're really using the plastic again. But in other cases, reuse of, for example, Petri glass disposables is always better than recycling, because therefore you use less energy.
The production of the plastic.
Yeah.
And so talking of energy, you also mentioned this is one of...
really amazing. And what we could add to that is like the closed energy, closed water, that the laboratory is basically recycling whatever it's waste. And it's like it's self-sustainable. That will be like the future of science, I think.
Yes, yeah, that's very true. When you think of using other resources, not just recycling plastic, but recycling, because that's the other thing. When you talk about using glass, you obviously think about all the sterilization and all the washing that goes on. But as you said, even the amount of energy used to wash these things and to reuse these things is less than just the disposable product itself creates. So I just wanted to move on a little bit from plastics, because you also mentioned energy use. And obviously, I think the Netherlands is very into its wind power and solar power and hydropower and things like that. And but then, you look at these industries, and you mentioned the freezers that we have that, people that don't work in a lab might be shocked to hear that we use freezers that are -80 kind of thing. And the amount of energy these produce. And you've mentioned something about one producing the amount of a household. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how you work towards that?
Yeah. So that's true. So I would rather call it an ultra low freezer. Sorry, because it indeed cools at -80, but it doesn't really need to be at -80. If you look at your stuff with is in the -80, it's at somewhere between -60 and -80. So you, for example, can also change the temperature of such a freezer already to -70. And actually then you already save 30% of the energy that is used. So that's a huge benefit, also in costs, of course. But actually the minus or the ultra low freezers, ultra low temperature freezers are not the most energy consuming equipment. So what do you think it is in the labs?
Oh, I've got no idea. I would honestly think it's the -80, so I'm going to back out of this question. I'm not sure.
It's actually the fume hoods.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So that consumes 3 times more compared to an ultra low temperature freezer. So that's 3.5 times the amount of energy of a normal household.
And so again, for anyone that doesn't work in the science industry, a fume hood is a hood that recycles or uses really sterilized air, where you work inside to work with clean material. And so yes, it's true, they are using a lot of energy, but that's interesting. I wouldn't think that.
Because the ventilation is on 24 hours a day. So what you could do really easily is shut the door of the fume hood, or it's called a sash, I think. And that also already saves 40% of energy. So if everybody would close the door, then there would be a little bit more money for other things.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I just wanted point.
So I just wanted to touch on, maybe Gosha, you can kind of help answer this as well. So we're talking about the small things that you can do to make these changes, and things like closing a fume hood, or maybe that's something just as a personal level you can do. But then my question is, where do you think it really starts? Is it with the individual researcher? Is it with a team? Is it with an institute? Or does it really need to go to government level? How do we get these within the eLife ambassador community? What kind of level are you guys trying to encourage people to work on?
I think that's a super important question. And I think it's pretty similar like with our recycling in the household. So in my opinion, it is very important to make a change as yourself, as an individual, because if everyone does, then it's going to be a huge change. But then if we are talking about the labs, of course, you are not, I mean, as a student or early career researcher, you are not a boss yourself. So it's good like the idea to talk with your colleagues and maybe convince your PI that it's a good idea to think about sustainable lab and like think how we can reduce impact. And then what is slowly changing is more like on the institutional or even governmental level. But this is, in my opinion, super slow. But I hope it will develop, like the funders will be happy if you, for example, write a project and then you show that your lab is sustainable. And then also like universities, applying like the policies of being more green labs or green universities, that will be really cool. But I think this is like a slow change, but I see a change, and I'm very positive about the future. But I think it makes sense to think yourself how you can make a change as an individual instead of waiting years that your country will make you to make a change.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, actually, it's a very good point. I was about to ask you, actually, to both of you, in your personal experience, what did it change for you as the way you do your research before and after you become an eLife ambassador?
You mean in sustainability? So for me, I became interested in sustainability in science because I was trying to be sustainable at home, but then I was at the same time I felt a little bit disconnected because at the lab I was not sustainable at all. So I think I feel more comfortable in that way, and I also feel that on a personal level it works kind of well because I reduced my plastic a little bit as far as possible. I'm thinking about the amount of freezer space that I'm using, but sometimes it's also a little bit frustrating because if you talk to a lot of your peers, they're all enthusiastic about it and they all want to also do their part, but then of course some things are difficult to implement from higher up.
Yeah.
So as a tip for people, that it's always good if you want to start with a green initiative in your lab or in your institute, that you could see if you could get maybe some professors or some directors on board that also want to help you. And then the costs, the saving of money is a good way.
Always a good way to start.
Yeah, to start.
I quite liked what Gostia said in comparing it to recycling at home, because yes, we all want to recycle at home, but the reason I think that most people do it is because it's easy, because we are provided with quite an easy place at your home. So as much as I think it needs to start on an individual level, if it's easy to do, then it's also easy to implement. So I think it's a bit of both. We just had an interesting question again. So this is from Ty. So do you know of any companies currently taking the initiative of working more sustainably for R&D and making their products?
What I can say about this is that there are certain companies that are better than others, and that and you can also find them on the eLife website. So we made a list of all type of green companies. One of the companies that I think is really famous is NEB. So what they try, they are working on, for example, making, or they are already there, room temperature stable polymerases. So they don't need to be shipped on dry ice anymore. So that saves the dry ice, but also the cooling things inside the box, but also this really bad styrofoam plastic boxes.
Sometimes and if you get a delivery of something this big, it's in a box
exactly.
This big.
That's terrible. And for example, NEB sometimes also offers a take back program for these plastic boxes. So then you can freely ship them back and then they will reuse them. So that's a good example. I think Sigma is also trying with shipping to reduce the packaging material, but it's not really working all the time. So what you can also do, if you get a tube in a box like this, just send an email that you don't like it like that, and then they start think about it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, actually, I got I think last year I got like a package, a cartoon, just an envelope, and had antibodies. So had like usually they are shipped at on ice or so, because supposedly they're not stable at room temperature. And then it arrived at my lab, and everybody was freaking out. Was they shipped at room temperature? It's not good anymore. Blah 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 blah. I contacted the sales representative. I was like, look, it came at room temperature, and then he replied like, yeah, it's fine. We tested. The antibodies are still stable at room temperature. It's just a way also to be more eco-friendly, and I guess also to decrease costs for the company as well.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's a lot of it. It's changing the way that we think about things. Like you said, with the minus 80, everyone says, oh, it has to be minus 80, but does it really? Is minus 70 okay? And if that saves 30% on energy, it's also, I think that's why it's very important that the eLife ambassadors are so worldwide, because it's changing not just individual researchers and their teams, but it's changing the whole industry, because we all publish in the same places. And, it's a very international industry, as I said. So it's also important that we accept what other people are doing, and that's the accepted practice as well.
Yeah.
yeah.
So actually in the UK, they are a little bit, they are at the forefront of making science more sustainable. And their researchers from the University College of London have developed a program which is called eLife, Laboratory Efficiency Assessment Framework. And they, on their website, they also really share really practical tips and tricks how you can implement all different types of things to reduce your plastic, to reduce your energy, to use less paper work in the lab. You can use electronic notebooks there, but tips that you can implement basically almost tomorrow, and also tips that you need to discuss with other people, of course. Yeah.
Yes. So that was actually kind of relating to another question we received about, does your lab have any initiatives going on at institutes, or which are the institutes that are kind of at the forefront of this? And you mentioned the eLife program. By which university was that?
It's from the University College of London.
Okay, great.
But also the University, I think, of Edinburgh and Exeter are really doing good things. So the University of Exeter has pledged to go single-use plastic-free by the end of 2023. So that's really fast.
Oh, wow, that is very fast. That sounds terrifying, to be honest, but yes.
Yeah, that's a good initiative. So it's single-use plastic-free. So it's not plastic-free, but it's a really good start.
Yeah. And are there? So you mentioned that you're in Poland. Are there any institutes doing anything over there, or how does the policy differ from maybe what's going on other parts of the world and other parts of Europe?
Yeah, I'm not very familiar if there's any like environmental initiative. I don't think we are there yet. But I hope we will get there. And it's the same about Portugal. But I think I mean, for example, when we published the opinion paper in Chemistry World talking about the plastic waste in the lab, we got like so much feedback from people on Twitter, and also like interested in like making a change, and also other like initiatives out there connecting with us. So I think it's changing, but in some countries like UK, it's much faster than in other countries, which suffer a little bit, like, they are not financed that good, then the environmental issue is probably not the highest priority at the moment, but it's a good way to save the money as well. So if people think about it this way, then it's a good argument, I think.
I guess that's where we really have to start to try and implement it across more countries, is looking at these, as an industry thing. And, as we all go to conferences, or we did before the current situation, and you go to conferences all around the world and meet scientists, and we're all kind of there to learn and discuss and do the same things. And, it feels like at every conference there should be something about sustainability. But I think actually when I was reading some of the links you said, and we only have a few minutes left, but maybe we can touch on it, that actually some of the travel that we do to conferences is also actually a big kind of burden on the environment.
Yeah, actually it is. For researchers, or more than 50% of the carbon emission from researchers of the University of Zurich is caused by air traveling. So that's an enormous amount. Yeah. So what you could think of there is maybe reduce the amount of, if a conference is held every year, it could be held every 2 or 3 years. And then maybe in the alternate years, it could be there could be local meetups. Or you could take, if you don't have to fly, maybe if you go within Europe, you can take the train, if that's possible, if the connection is okay. And here I also, the bike.
I have some colleagues biking to the conferences, yes.
Yeah,
really
cool. Yeah, it's pretty Dutch.
Yeah.
Also, but it's insane if you try to go with your laptop and everything, and then
and your poster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what's
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if the current situation will change a little bit the way that we do conferences, because again, for people not in the industry, conferences are so important for us connecting and keeping this worldwide industry worldwide. And you know, your peers are not necessarily at an institute a few hours away in the same country. They may be at an institute around the world for who you're, you know, I won't say competitors, but people that are working on the same thing. So you really need to go to these conferences to meet, but trying to do it sustainably is it's a big point.
So yeah, so I totally agree with you. So I think that also, so now we see with in times of the corona pandemic that video conferencing is really going up. So it's certainly possible to join a lot of conferences online from your own living room. But of course, it's always good to see people live, but maybe a little bit less is also possible. And here I also want to mention that there is a study that shows that the amount of air traveling that scientists do is not correlated to your professional success. So it isn't, yeah. So I think that's something to think about.
Yeah. Networking isn't everything.
Well, I think, I know, I don't want to say that networking isn't everything, but I think there are other ways of networking. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Which you can do without flying. Yeah.
But another thing I was actually reminding, it's the coffee cups. So actually, before the corona crisis, I even got a glass coffee cup, and I was the only one getting the everybody was like, "Why you are using that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to make an effort." I mean, I don't do it every day, but if you do every week at the end of the year, it's like a lot of cup glasses you are using it. So I was making an effort to use the glass cup. Now the place is closed, so I'm not going there anymore. But yeah, these kind of things. I mean, if you go every day to the same place to get coffee, you can very easily just get your own glass cup. I know immediately it doesn't feel like a safe for you, but if you are a bit aware and if you feel bad about the plastic you are wasting in the lab doing your research, then I think you can, at least these little things can also help indirectly.
I will agree that coffee breaks are just as important as a lot of the stuff you're doing in the lab.
Yeah.
So.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'm just going to wrap up because we're just getting over time now. But thank you so much, guys. It's been a really interesting discussion. So as you mentioned, there's your website and quite a lot of links there for people to find tips, tricks, but also to see what other institutes are doing. So we have made a link where you can see a lot of these links that you have discussed, and to, you know, join the eLife Ambassador community, or just try and start things from a you know, individual level, or also things to go to your institute about and see what they're interested in doing. And definitely the saving money is always a key point, I think. So I think we can just quickly show what you'll be looking at. So yeah, so here you can find a lot of the links that both Bente and Gosia have discussed today. And there's I read through them over the last week, and there's some really interesting reads there, and I think they're very important. So we will also share these on our social media afterwards, so you can also get hold of the links. So thank you, guys. That was a really great discussion. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Yes, thank you.
Let's just please toast.
Yes, we must toast. So to find now and sustainability. Cheers.
Cheers.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed it. And we will be back again in 2 weeks, where we will be having a discussion about snake organoids. And what are snake organoids? We'll find out. Basically, tune in. It should be really interesting. Okay, thank you everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.